Oops. Okay. Alright, looks like we are live. So, I'm ckixy. I'm going to be doing Owlboy any percent run. And I guess we will jump straight into it. Alright, so we're also playing on Simplified Chinese. It just kind of speeds up some of the text on it. And let's get started. So starting now. So, there's a skip cutscene button. It's not very common, not very used during the run, but it's helpful in some situations, especially during boss fights. So right off the bat, we're going to do a glitch, and it's going to be used throughout the whole entire run, called a food zip. Basically, if you try to grab food with left click and you try to eat the food with right click, it just violently throws you out of bounds. So we're going to use that a lot. Also, we're supposed to go up and explore the whole map, talk to a bunch of people, find our buddy Getty, and then use him to get through these boxes down below, but we're not going to do that because we're trying to speedrun. So we're just going to fly right out of bounds and get the run started. So there we go, we're out of bounds, but like I said, we just want to get around boxes, which are right over there, so we're actually just going to go right back in bounds using this little pot here. So now we are down into Valley Caves, and this is our buddy Getty that just magically appears, because why not? Also, we don't have the teleport ability yet, so we're just going to throw him away, and we don't really need Getty for a while. So, Valley Caves is interesting. We pretty much are just trying to keep the game from soft locking. Also, there's another zip here. Also, if you mess up the zips, depending on... Oh, let me just restart. So if you pull a piece of food out of the ground, it kind of messes up the zip, and it can do some bad stuff. Okay. So we want to go over here, make him laugh, because if we don't, it breaks and soft locks. Also, we want to hit this cutscene trigger. So you could actually just like fly to the end, but nothing will work because you haven't progressed the text or the whole dialogue area. So we need to hit some like invisible triggers and such. Alright, so we have another zip here. Coming up. We're gonna see these like everywhere. Also, they're kind of a little frustrating sometimes. They're like pretty much frame perfect. You have to release left and right trigger at exactly the same time, which for some reason is just like really difficult for me. Alright, so we have another cutscene here, and we're actually going to click an invisible button there on the menu. It's actually the skip cutscene button, but this doesn't count as a cutscene. But basically, you can preload the skip cutscene for the next cutscene coming up, which there is a little boss fight here that we're just going to skip the cutscene for. And this is the last trigger in Valley Caves to get through, and now we can actually get to the relic and get our teleport ability. Alright, so we're also going to get some like doubling over on audio here. It's going to be a little weird, because it still thinks we're in the boss fight for some reason. So once we get our teleport ability, it allows us to use another glitch called the partner clip. And you can basically flip out of bounds using your partner by summoning them in an area that it still thinks is summonable, but it's not really quite the right size, and you get just pushed out of bounds. Pretty simple. Also, when I receive this relic, if I pause on exactly the right frame, I could actually skip this player card that pops up, and it wastes like 5 to 10 seconds about. So we'll try to do that. It's on the 5th bob at its peak. So you'll see that when I receive it here. Okay, so we skip the player card, so it just goes straight to dialogue. That's the one I could get consistent. The other two I probably am gonna miss. Alright, so now we could teleport our partner, and we could fly around with him. And you could throw them on buttons. So we break the bomb box here, stand on the top barrel, and now we're back out of bounds, because we enjoy that a lot in this game. Also, we hit a cutscene there, and we are back in bounds, and we are done with Valley Caves. So something I didn't mention is zip variations. So there are normal zips where you just do this like giant crescent shape like a C. Then there are turnaround zips where halfway through the zip you push in opposite direction and you'll actually do like a zigzag or like an S shape. Then there's like an early up where if you're holding up as you start the zip, it'll cancel your height to an extent. And then there are also up cancels, which you just cancel all your vertical height. Oh. So this is an early up. Then this is going to be a left-facing turnaround. Also, this thing's gonna shoot me. Okay. So now we're out of bounds, and there's this gate here, but we just fly past it and hit the cutscene trigger. And now we're in Tropos. So, like I said, this game, you're pretty much just trying to keep it from soft locking. And one of the things that you have to do to keep it from soft locking is actually go gather up all your partners. You could get 3 followers during this game. It's Getty, Twig, and Alphonse. And so we're going to go get Alphonse now. Because if you don't have him and a cutscene requires that character, the game will just crash. It's pretty great. So this one, you have to do a left-facing zip on the left food. If you don't do it on the left, you can't get into this door here. Also, we skipped a cutscene there, so on our way out, you'll see that. Also here, like a week ago, it used to be a partner clip, but now you can just like throw that thing and go out of bounds. So there's like partner clips, there's zips, and now there's object zips. Alright, so we go up here, get to this food, hit checkpoint, and then... Oh, okay, so see that food is halfway pulled out, so I have to reset on that. 1 second. Oh. Okay, so if you mess up a zip, you could also see like you kind of go in a weird direction. There we go. That was good. So here we're going to try to throw Getty and then drop onto this platform. And during the cutscene, you actually fall down and it saves you a little bit of time and you could activate this one. So this is the next player card skip, which I just barely missed. So you can see actually what the player card looks like. Also, we have to reload here because we never fought Alphonse, so the game thinks he's still an enemy. So until you reload there, every time you try to summon him in, he will actually just like start beating you up. Oh, hold on 1 second. Okay. So I'm taking this area a little bit slow because normally that enemy there kind of stresses me out. You could actually just like fly right in and zip out, but it's a little bit difficult. So now we're pretty much just trying to exit Owl Temple, and as you can see, it's a very far flight. So we're just gonna fly through the out of bounds area. Also, the camera's gonna freak out there for a second. All right. So now, as I said, we skipped a cutscene when we entered into Owl Temple. So now when we exit, there's going to be a cutscene there. And we're actually going to skip it, but for some reason it leaves the screen blank. So we have to blindly navigate until we see a new load zone. Right there. And now we could load and we're down here. Oh, I'm just going to get slapped around a little bit. Alright, so now we're leaving Owl Temple. So that is how we get Alphonse during this run. So now we are going to try to go get Twig. Twig is interesting because there's some very weird ways to get to him. So we're just going to go out of bounds here. Oh, let me reset this. Okay, so we're going to go out of bounds here. There's a secret entrance warp point here, and we can actually clip out of bounds with the chest. So let's get up into this room. Here we are. So we're in this room, and you just jump up and partner clip out. And now this is gonna be weird. There's just like 9 enemies just staying out of bounds, and one of them just has a warp trigger in it right there. And now we're in Twig's house. We don't know why, but it just works that way. So because we entered Twig's house in a weird direction and we didn't go through the main area, when you first arrive, Twig is like kind of upset and he wants to talk to you. And we just never do because we entered in a weird way. So now he permanently, in this area, always wants to talk to you, no matter what. And because when you go to talk to someone, it kind of positions you next to him, so it looks like you're facing him. You could actually use that to clip out of bounds. So that's yet another method to get out of bounds. So we're gonna use that here in a second. Alright, so we're just gonna fly up here, summon Twig, and talk to him. And we're back out of bounds. And we're just gonna hit this little load trigger. And we are now in Mothership. Okay, that's strange. Also, if you pull off that vent and drop Twig, the vent will get pulled down without it coming to you, and you could actually use that to speed up some areas here. Also, there's a bomb here. If you spin at exactly the right time through bombs, you could actually just break them, and they don't do anything to you. Alright. So Mothership, you just kind of go through it normally, and there's a skip coming up with Twig, which is yet another way to get out of bounds, because in this area there's no food in the ground. You can't zip off of food that is already out of the ground. So we need to find other methods to get out. So Twig, I didn't really explain it, but he has a grapple ability. If you hold left click and release it, you'll kind of grapple to an area. And then if you spam left click, he does like a web shoot. So in this next upcoming area, vents and partners are kind of like 2 blocks wide. If you imagine like some of the sizing in this game to be like blocks. And so while you're in a vent, you can't actually pull certain objects through them. Okay. Those bombs stress me out so much. So, when you grab Twig in a vent and you try to grab an object, you can actually pull that object in, but it doesn't go into your hands because it can't really fit technically. And so it'll just kind of result in the game glitching out a little bit. So we'll see that here. So we go up into this vent, summon Twig, pull this event, and then re-grab Twig. Now we don't really have Twig, but we do have Twig. So we could grab this object and just go through the floor. So it still has the hitbox of Twig, but it's attached to you. So since it's attached to you, you just kind of clip through the floor there. Oh, and I just grabbed a vent for no reason. So during this whole area, it's kind of weird. There's hitboxes everywhere, so it's kind of hard to move around. And now we are back in bounds. Okay. Also, when you're pulling these things, if you just spam up in a rhythm, you could actually pull them up a little bit faster. Alright. Also, we just did that area like completely backwards because we weren't supposed to have Alphonse. We used the Twig clip to get out of bounds to get Alphonse early, and then we just did that puzzle way faster than we were supposed to normally. Alright, so this is an interesting fight. So something about Twig. If you grapple and throw him at exactly the right time, you'll get iframes for some reason. And we're just gonna iframe through all of his attacks. And then he dashes towards you, so you want to go to the closest wall. And that's the first cycle. So first and second cycle are actually the hardest ones. The third cycle is super easy, and you'll see why in a second. So these cycles, there's ways to do it without Twig, of course. You could just kind of move around, but I just like doing it with Twig because it's way easier. Alright, third cycle coming up. Let's see how this goes. So you'll see I ended up near this door. I'm gonna shuffle to the left a tiny amount in between the door. And now we have to do nothing during this whole cycle. We could just kind of sit here, twiddle our thumbs. Super exciting phase, right? So now we actually want him to end up on this side, because every time he gets a damage phase, he blasts you backwards, so he's gonna blast us near the door to the right. And yeah, that was the Dirk fight. That's actually good. I normally take damage during first and second phase for some reason, but not too bad. So now, unfortunately, this is where the run has cutscene gauntlet. It's just gonna be like back-to-back cutscenes. But if you ever play this game casually, it has like such a great story. It's really good. But with the speedrun, it's a little unfortunate because you see the story in like a completely different way. Oh, really, Fizz? Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, apparently the devs knew about the safe spot. That's interesting. Alright, so now we're over here into the relic room. Apparently, I think if you damage these just a little bit, it speeds up the cutscene. Basically, they're like, we need to get the relics out, and you just kind of want to spam shoot them until they realize that you can't get the relics out. So yeah, we're just gonna pepper these a little bit. So something that's interesting here is if you played this game casually, you would know all throughout the game, everyone is super disappointed in your character because to them it looks like you just keep messing up over and over again. But in reality, you've been on this like epic adventure doing all of this stuff and trying really hard. And the speedrun almost completely turns around the story, and you just do non-stop like boss fights and just like save the world. It's really strange how much the speedrun changes the story. Also, fun fact here is we had Getty this entire time, but story-wise, we were actually supposed to lose Getty a while ago. He gets upset that you sided with like a pirate and with Twig, and so he kind of goes away for a while. And so this cutscene is supposed to be like his epic return. Also, this character was never really introduced because we didn't go through the main area, but this is Solus. They were kind of like a friend in the overworld to an extent, where you kind of just meet them. But they have been helping the pirates get all the relics so then they could steal it later. Alright. So yeah, this is the area where we just get a bunch of cutscenes. And there's not much you could do about it. Alright, so that's where Getty, like, finally arrives back, but to us, we've had him the whole time in our party. Oh, and when I was talking about the game crashing with partners, uh, if you come into Mothership without all three, or two partners, Alphonse and Twig, that's when it crashes, because it tries to load them up in the cutscene. Alright, so we're about to finally arrive back to Velia, and then we're going to do one zip, and we'll be back to cutscenes. Oh, I guess that's another thing I didn't mention is with zips, there are zip variations and then combinations of those. So you could actually combine like any zip variation together to do different things. So on this next one, we're going to do like an early up turnaround. So we'll be holding up as we activate the zip and then do a turnaround with it. Oh, another thing to note is there aren't supposed to be pirates here, but because we skip so many cutscenes, they just never like unloaded. Okay, hold on. Let me reset this. Okay. So now we just appear here. Also, that cutscene right there is from the very beginning of the game. And since we skipped it, it's still just there. And you'll see when we leave too, it activates the same cutscene. So the game is kind of confused at this point. It doesn't have the right triggers for anything. Although there's only like one trigger that matters, and that's what gets us into space, which is the next area. Also, we never met this character, which we are supposed to meet in this one area that we skipped after El Temple. I think it's actually shown in the all boss route. Alright, so now we're heading to space. Or at least the edge of space. So lore-wise, basically all these islands have just been floating further and further into space and causing issues, and it was from something in the past, and that's what Solus is trying to fix. But we don't really know that, so we're trying to stop Solus. Also, this shows like all the characters that you met throughout the run, if you played it casually. But in the any percent run, it's just kind of like, who are these people? So since there's a lot of cutscenes here, I should probably go on kind of the end spiel, but we still have a little bit of time. But if you ever are interested in speedrunning Owlboy, I'd highly recommend it. It's a fun, like mechanically heavy game. So it's just like a lot of glitches back to back, and I just love it. And it's also a short run, so it's pretty easy to pick up. If you check out the speedrun.com listing for Owlboy, it should have all the guides in there, it should have the Discord, everything. The community's been super helpful. Vismajor, who's talking in chat, I think he was the one who set up all the guides for any percent and all bosses and stuff. And then Vic3 has some of the video guides. So between those two, you could pick this game up. I think I picked it up within a day and had like decent runs. So it's been a lot of fun. Yes, there's a glitchless any percent, then there's all bosses, and or did I say any percent? 100%, there we go. That's what I was trying to say. There's glitchless, 100%, any percent, and all bosses are like the main categories. And the all boss route is pretty fun. That one's interesting because you use some much different glitches to get into certain areas. Yeah, not many people run the no out of bounds. Or I guess it's no out of bounds instead of glitchless, yeah. Also here we have like back-to-back cutscenes. Something to note is since we're in space, we now have like an exhaustion meter. You could see every time I pulse white, that means I'm like exhausted. And you just can't fly anymore. So this is actually very important because in one of the skips coming up, you actually manipulate it where you can reset that exhaustion meter using a damage buff in a way. So it's very interesting. Also, it makes some of the platforming in this area very sketchy, and this is actually one of the areas I'm not really good at. So we'll see how it goes. Also, if you tap up in a direction at exactly the right time, you'll do kind of this like sideways pulse of speed. Alright, so this is the chandelier section. This is where you really see managing like your exhaustion. Because if your exhaustion gets interrupted, where you don't flash white, next time you try to fly, you'll instantly get exhausted and it'll cancel out your height. So you have to kind of consume it to reset it. Also, here we have the library skip. This skips a skip that was very frustrating, and I did it once and then gave up. And then we found this one. So you take a damage buff, and then you could cancel your flight with right click and press up to refly. And you could actually just keep toggling this, and then you could turn around to get some distance sideways. And this just flies so much faster than what you're supposed to do. And now we hit a trigger there, and we are through. Also, that out of bounds, by the way, you just take that elevator and you could go out of bounds. It's pretty great. So I guess that's another method of out of bounds. So this is the platforming that scares me. Those little rocks. They're like so tiny. Also, when you're on a floating platform like this, jumping will make it fly up faster. So here we want to count the statues. And on the 7th statue, you hit that trigger and jump back. And just because you're on the right side, a magical skip cutscene button shows up. If you go up in the normal route, you won't have that skip cutscene button. And it's like this auto scroller section that is like 4 minutes or something like that. It's really long. So just because you load it in a weird way, you just get a cutscene skip. Pretty great. So here we have the final boss fight. So Getty does like the most damage here, but if you see, the boss Solus has 3 different relics, and each relic can only be destroyed by 1 person each, so you have to keep switching partners and using their specific attacks. Alright, also during this attack, they stay down below a little bit longer than you might think. Alright. So that's phase 1. So phase 2 is exactly the same thing. You just want to damage all 3 relics. During this attack, you have to dash through it with Twig. Alright. So in phase 3, you could actually just do damage with anyone, and we're gonna use Twig just because he has the longest range. So there's 1 or 2 attacks during this phase that you can't attack. This one you can, but it's very difficult. And then if you ever see like a massive wall, that one you can't attack. this wall right here. So this one is just a waste of time if you get it. Alright, that is the Solus fight. So now there is not much left to do. Just a couple more cutscenes. So this is kind of the area where it explains where Solus was actually trying to break the Hex and return the world back to normal. And as I said, this game has a really good story. If you play it casually, it builds up really well. So the speedrun kind of doesn't do it justice. So this entire time, the pirate that Solus was helping was Maelstrom, and you normally see Maelstrom in another area of the game that we skipped, but you kind of saw him during Mothership. And the pirates are actually just these like mechanical beings that have just been told to like attack, kind of, and just cause war. Or they develop as they go, so they've learned to kind of just create wars as they go. So you could see he's like the main enemy, I guess, through this game, just because he always shows up at the worst times. And here we finally side with Solus, and then Maelstrom shows up. As he does. Alright, so now we just have to align the hex device. And we're gonna crawl super slow. During this on my first casual playthrough, I got through like all the hex alignments and then got speared by his giant anchor. I was like so confused by it. Alright. And just a couple more cutscenes, and we will be done. So basically at this point, the islands are starting to fall back to Earth. Because this entire world has been floating for so long, no one really remembers being back down on the world below. But the Hex was what was causing all the islands to float. And you could kind of see in the background it's falling. And we finally get to see Maelstrom die. Alright, so the ending here is just kind of a little dream sequence with Otis. And really the only move tech here is if you pulse going forward, you could get a little speed boost here. And timing will end when I lose control at a gate. I'll call it out. Alright, And this has pretty much been Owlboy. So as I said, if you're interested in this game, the speedrun.com has like all the resources that you could ever need for it. And also the Discord has like a glitch chat and everything, so if you find new stuff or if you want to be up to date, it has all that information there. The community for this game has been awesome. That's time. Alright, and that's Owlboy. So, that will be it for me and for my runs. But please do keep donating for this wonderful cause. And also, if you don't know, there's donation incentives that haven't been met. There's, I believe it's Wii Sports, and that one's coming up in like 5 runs or so. And then there's also a 120 star Super Mario 64 like upgrade, because it's going to be a 70 star if the goal isn't matched. So if you could get that, it'll add like a whole nother hour to the run. It'll be pretty great. And I believe that's it for me. So thanks for watching and keep enjoying the stream.